What if I told you that Portland has more food carts per capita than any city in America, over 600 operating simultaneously, and that the food cart model that American cities have been trying to replicate for 20 years was built in Portland because a city ordinance made it cheaper to open a cart than a restaurant? That a donut shop in Portland became globally famous by making donuts shaped like coffins, topped with Cap'n Crunch cereal, and decorated like voodoo dolls, and that the line forms before they open every morning? Oregon, the Beaver State. The Pacific Northwest's quieter neighbor to Washington, with a coastline, a desert, a rainforest, a volcanic range, and the most productive agricultural valley in America, all within one state border. The Marionberry is a cultivar of blackberry released in 1956 by the USDA Agricultural Research Service breeding program in cooperation with Oregon State University. It is named after Marion County, Oregon, where the berry was bred and tested extensively. In 1945, Dr. George F. Waldo embarked on a breeding program aimed at developing a blackberry variety with superior qualities. He crossed a Chehalem blackberry with an Olalley berry, both of which are caneberry hybrids. The resulting hybrid, initially called OSC928, was tested for nearly a decade before release. It is the most widely planted trailing blackberry in the world. Oregon accounts for over 90% of the worldwide acreage of Marionberries. Waldo spent 2 full decades trying to breed the perfect blackberry, one with outstanding flavor and manageable vines. The wild Himalayan blackberries that grow across Oregon produce extraordinary fruit on vines that are practically weapons, thorned, sprawling, nearly impossible to eradicate. The well-behaved varieties had mediocre fruit. Waldo wanted both. The Marionberry has been dubbed the king of blackberries and stars in jam, candies, and cocktails, as well as in the official Oregon State pie. Most people outside Oregon have eaten Marionberry without knowing it. Over 95% of Marion is processed as frozen fruit, puree, and juice. Jams, ice cream, and other products made with Marionberries are popular in Oregon and are sold throughout North America. The berry that the blackberry jam in your refrigerator came from was probably a Marionberry. The berry in the premium ice cream was probably a Marionberry. The Willamette Valley, with its fertile soil and mild climate, is now home to 99.9% of the U.S. commercial hazelnut industry. Every hazelnut grown commercially in the United States comes from Oregon. All of it. The entire national supply from a single valley in a single state. Oregon hazelnuts are recognized for their in-shell quality, large size, rich flavor, and freshness. French settlers brought hazelnut trees to Oregon Territory from England and France in the 1850s. The Willamette Valley's mild, wet winters and warm, dry summers turned out to be nearly perfect conditions, better than anywhere in Europe except perhaps Piedmont in Italy, which produces the hazelnuts that go into the finest Gianduja chocolates. Ferrero Hazelnut Company, the Italian maker of the hazelnut spread Nutella and hazelnut chocolates, is the biggest single buyer of Oregon hazelnuts. The company that makes Nutella flies to Oregon to buy its nuts. The Willamette Valley hazelnut is inside every jar. Oregon declared the hazelnut its official state nut in 1989. There are between 800 and 1,000 hazelnut farmers in the valley, most of them multi-generational family farms. The trees are unusual. They pollinate in winter, their catkins extending and releasing pollen in cold January air before anything else has bloomed. The nut is harvested in fall by machines that shake the trees and vacuum the nuts from the ground. The flavor is specific, clean, slightly sweet, more buttery and less astringent than the hazelnuts from Turkey or Italy that dominate global production. In 1909, 10 dairy farmers on the northern Oregon coast formed a cooperative. They had a problem. They were producing more milk than they could sell in a location too remote to transport fresh dairy to markets before it spoiled. The solution was cheese, a product that could be aged, stored, and shipped without refrigeration. They called the cooperative the Tillamook County Creamery Association, named for the county on Oregon's coast where the Tillamook and Wilson rivers meet the Pacific. The land there, green, rain-soaked, foggy, produces some of the richest grass in the Pacific Northwest. The cows eat well. The milk reflects it. Tillamook's sharp cheddar, aged for a minimum of 60 days, sometimes for years, became the benchmark for West Coast cheddar in a way that Cabot Creamery became the benchmark for New England cheddar. The cooperative grew slowly, then quickly. Tillamook now produces over 167,000 pounds of cheese per day. Its cheddar is sold in every grocery store in America. The cooperative is still farmer-owned. The 10 dairy farmers who formed it in 1909 have been replaced by generations of family farms, but the structure has not changed. Profits return to the farmers. The cheese factory in Tillamook is the second most visited tourist attraction in Oregon, after Crater Lake. In 2003, two friends named Tress Shannon and Kenneth Cat Daddy Pogson opened a donut shop in Old Town Portland at 22 Southwest 3rd Avenue. The shop was small. The hours were extreme. Open 24 hours, 365 days a year. The donuts were not like other donuts. Voodoo Doughnut served a donut shaped like a coffin. A donut decorated like a voodoo doll, with a pretzel stake through its heart. A donut topped with Cap'n Crunch cereal. A donut glazed and covered with bacon. A donut called the Cock and Balls that requires no further description. A donut called the Dirt that was filled with vanilla custard, topped with crushed Oreos to resemble dirt, and finished with a gummy worm. None of these things should have worked. All of them worked immediately. The line formed before the doors opened. The line has not stopped forming since. Voodoo Doughnut became one of the most photographed food destinations in America. Not because it is the best donut in Portland, it is not, but because it is the most specific, the most committed, the most relentlessly itself. The pink boxes. The slogan, "The magic is in the hole." The Voodoo Doll Donut, which requires a full minute of work from a counter employee with a pretzel. None of it makes sense. All of it lines up with Portland's relationship to its own food culture, loud, weird, confident, and entirely uninterested in your opinion. The Willamette Valley of Oregon is the best place in the United States to grow Pinot Noir. This is not a marketing claim. It is the consensus of the international wine community, including Burgundian producers who came to Oregon in the 1980s, specifically because the climate reminded them of Côte d'Or. Pinot Noir is the most difficult major wine grape to grow. It is sensitive to temperature, to rain at the wrong moment, to heat spikes, to cold snaps. It thrives in the narrow band of climate conditions where the days are warm enough to ripen the grape and the nights are cold enough to preserve the acidity that gives Pinot its character. The Willamette Valley sits in that band. David Lett, nicknamed Papa Pinot, planted the first commercial Pinot Noir vines in the Willamette Valley in 1965, when Oregon was not considered a serious wine region. In 1979, his 1975 Airy Vineyards South Block Reserve placed second in a blind tasting in Paris, organized by Gault Millau. The same French food critics who organized the 1976 Paris tasting where California wines defeated French wines. The French were not pleased. Robert Drouhin of Burgundy's Maison. Joseph Drouhin bought land in the Willamette Valley in 1987. His presence confirmed what David Lett had been arguing for 20 years. Oregon now has over 700 wineries. Portland has more food carts per capita than any other American city. Over 600 operating simultaneously, organized into pods, clusters of carts sharing seating areas, across the city. The phenomenon is not an accident. It is the result of a city ordinance. In the early 2000s, Portland's regulations made it significantly cheaper to open and operate a food cart than a brick-and-mortar restaurant. The health code was manageable. The permitting was accessible. The rent was low. Entrepreneurs who wanted to cook but didn't have restaurant capital found that a cart was viable. Immigrant communities found that a cart was a path into the food economy. Chefs found that a cart was a way to test a concept without betting everything on it. The pods developed because the carts needed customers, and customers needed seating. Southwest 5th and 6th Avenues in downtown Portland became the largest pod. Dozens of carts in a single location, serving everything from Ethiopian injera to Korean bibimbap to Peruvian ceviche to American BBQ. The variety in a single Portland pod exceeds the variety in most American food courts of 10 times the size. Portland's food cart culture has been imitated by every major American city. Oregon shares the Dungeness crab with Washington State and Alaska. The crab ranges the entire Pacific coast, but Oregon's crabbing tradition is specifically its own, built around the ports of Newport, Astoria, Coos Bay, and the cold, productive waters of the Oregon continental shelf. The Oregon Dungeness crab season opens in December along the coast and runs through August. The December opening is the event of the year in coastal Oregon towns. Boats come in loaded, dock prices are at their highest, and locals line up at the docks to buy crabs directly from the fishermen at prices that restaurant menus will not see for another 24 hours. Newport, on the central Oregon coast, is Oregon's largest commercial fishing port and home to the world's largest concentration of ocean-going research vessels. It is also home to a crab culture that is communal, seasonal, and specifically coastal. You buy your Dungeness at the dock, you steam it at home or at a waterfront restaurant, you crack it at a newspaper-covered table with drawn butter and sourdough bread, and you eat until you cannot eat more. Oregon is the craft beer state that California gets credit for. This is not accurate, and Oregonians know it. The craft brewing movement in the United States has deep roots in Oregon. Blitz Weinhard Brewing Company operated in Portland from 1856 until 1999. One of the oldest regional breweries in the country. When the modern craft brewing era began in the 1970s and 1980s, Oregon was ahead of it. Bridgeport Brewing, opened in Portland in 1984, was the first craft brewery in Oregon and one of the first in the country. Rogue Ales opened in Ashland in 1988. Deschutes Brewery opened in Bend in 1988. Oregon now has over 300 craft breweries, more per capita than any state except Vermont. The Oregon Brewers Festival, held in Portland every July since 1988, is one of the largest craft beer festivals in the world. Portland's beer culture is specific and serious. The city has more microbreweries per capita than any other city in the world except, again, Vermont's Burlington. The Pacific Northwest hop-growing region of Oregon and Washington provides the raw material. The Willamette Valley and Yakima Valley together grow the majority of American hops. Oregon's craft beer is not specifically one style. Off the coast of Oregon, every summer, the Pacific Albacore tuna runs north from warmer waters following the food supply. The season lasts from July through October. Oregon's troll fishermen, using hook and line methods, not nets, follow the schools offshore and return with fish caught individually, handled carefully, bled and iced immediately on the boat. Oregon albacore tuna is the standard against which canned tuna should be measured, and almost never is. The difference between albacore troll caught off the Oregon coast and the commodity tuna sold in grocery store cans is the difference between a fresh-caught salmon and a fish stick. The troll-caught Oregon albacore, canned by small processors in Newport and Astoria, using the fish's own oil rather than water or vegetable oil, has a flavor and texture that makes the industrial product seem like a different food entirely. Oregon's small boat tuna fishery is one of the most sustainable commercial fisheries in America. The trollers catch fish one at a time. They know the condition of each fish they bring in. The processing is local. The product is specific. Outside of Oregon and the Pacific Northwest, Oregon albacore tuna is available primarily through mail order and specialty stores. Oregon does not have a single famous dish the way that Philadelphia has the cheesesteak or Nashville has the hot chicken. Oregon has a landscape, specifically the Willamette Valley, and a specific commitment to doing things correctly that runs through everything from berry breeding to craft brewing to the troll fishing boats that catch tuna one at a time offshore. The Marionberry took 20 years to develop because the scientist refused to release it until it was exactly right. The hazelnuts are the best in the world because the soil and climate of the Willamette Valley produce something that Turkey and Italy cannot replicate. Tillamook is still a farmer cooperative after 115 years because the farmers who started it in 1909 built a structure that nobody has found a reason to change. The Voodoo Doughnut is exactly what it is because Portland decided that weird and committed beats polished and anonymous. Not every state has 99% of the national supply of a single ingredient. Not every state's most famous blackberry was bred by a scientist who spent 20 years getting it exactly right. Not every state has a donut shop where the line forms before dawn for a pastry shaped like a voodoo doll.